Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt. Joining me, as always, over there in blustery, apocalyptically cold New York City, my man, Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
I'm good. Is it super cold in Allentown in Eastern PA?
Oh, dude.
Did you get the squall a few minutes ago?
We got the squall. They were talking about the squall like it was the second coming, and it blew through here between 12 and 2, as expected, as predicted.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it was something else. One second it was fine, the next it was a whiteout outside. Crazy.
First of all, if you are listening to this, we're recording this Wednesday evening, the 30th?
30th of January.
January
correct.
30th. If you are anywhere in the upper Midwest, so say Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan,
Fargo. What about Fargo?
Fargo, the capital of college football championships.
That's right.
If you are in the upper Midwest, upper Plains area, we hope there are multiple earmuffs on top of whatever you are listening to us on right this very moment, and you are doing everything you can to stay warm. And nobody wants to be a frostbite hero, Ty. Don't let anybody be a frostbite hero.
I sent you a link that I saw.
Frostquake.
People in Chicago were hearing booms, and it was due to something called a frostquake.
So if you are Clayton Thorson listening to this show, get safe from the frostquakes. No clue. I mean, it's sort of like that with thunder snow.
Yeah.
That's been my favorite combination of weather terms that we've had recently.
Unbelievable. So, well, welcome back in, Dan. It's good to talk to you. If you're listening for the first time or for the umpteenth time, don't forget you can find us out on Twitter, twitter.com/solidverbal. We've also got a Facebook. We've got an Instagram. We've also got a subreddit started by Verballers, fans of the show, for other fans of the show, which you can find at reddit.com/r/solidverbal. And of course, we are on Apple Podcasts and really anywhere you can find podcasts, be it Spotify or Google Play, you name it. We are out there.
Throw us a review. Procrastinate doing something else by throwing us a 5-star review. Be specific. We check them out for sure.
You can also hit us up if you've got something to get off your chest at solidverbal@gmail.com. So a variety of different ways that you can get in touch with us if you so desire. Today, Dan, we're going to be talking a little SEC. And by we, I mean you, because you were the one who recorded this show with our friend Andy Staples from Sports Illustrated. Yes,
and SiriusXM does a great job with Jason Horowitz there. I think it's College Sports Nation. I want to get that correct, because you know how much we do treasure SiriusXM.
Absolutely.
College football content.
Of course.
Yes, recorded with Andy already. That's coming up here just shortly. But here is something that I want to talk about real, not quick, but medium quick. So I would say we've each had not significant or significant to medium significant medical experiences recently.
Yes.
You won the toss. So you are going to, I talked about your, I guess it's mouth drama ahead of the ACC show I did with Chip Patterson from CBS last week. And that you had mouth trauma that needed to be dealt with in an emergency way. And even though you were actually available to record, you were a DNP mouth. What ended up happening. If that gives you any idea, because this is your instrument.
Sure.
This is your connection to the college football universe. So what I want to ask you, how you doing?
I'm good now. I'm better now. Yeah,
okay.
A week ago.
So walk me through everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to give the abridged version because people ultimately, I think, want to hear college football. But yeah, I cracked a tooth before Christmas. It took a while to figure out that it was cracked. Eventually, they end up testing it. And I'm no dentist, but my evaluation of how they evaluate the tooth is they put a little bit of liquid nitrogen or something very cold on a small cotton swab and then put it directly on your tooth to see what happens.
Yeah.
Like what's going to happen if we do this? And of course they did that and I almost jumped through the ceiling.
Yep.
But that was their indication that I apparently needed a root canal, which I've never had done before. And when they do this, they of course numb you up and it's this whole big drawn out thing. You don't feel it as it's going on and you're numb for hours afterwards. But what you also don't feel as part of that process is when they stick the big old X-ray thing in there to double check and make sure that they've done the procedure correctly. It's not always done in a gentle fashion, let's say. And in this case, it most certainly wasn't, because they ripped up the entire left side of my mouth, which meant that trying to talk had the interesting results.
No, I would have listened to this show entirely with you sounding like that.
Yeah, it had interesting results, and therefore the instrument, as you call it, would not have been tuned up to specifications, because I couldn't really talk all that well for about a week. And I was very annoyed by it, but now I'm back. I'm off the shelf. It seems as if the procedure worked. It's not fully done yet. I've got some other odds and ends that need to be. Yeah. No. This isn't done yet. We've got 2 more appointments, but everyone can relax. I'm fine. The voice is fine. I'm not having the voice problems like it did a couple of years ago. I'm back. I'm good to go.
Can we do a quick exercise before we get to Andy, where we're doing a sort of autopsy, taking what happened with each SEC team in 2018 and the offseason thereafter, and figuring out what it means for, I guess, the future of these programs, these 14 programs.
Okay.
The exercise I want to do, I want to honor your mouth, because this is why we're here, Ty. We're here for honor.
Yeah.
I want to quickly go through. We don't need to do all 14 teams. Whatever comes to mind. Will you pull up the SEC standings? I'll give you a second.
I've got them in front of me. I've got them in front of
you.
Yep.
I want to go through as many teams as we'd like to do, you'd like to do, whatever. And I want to find the moment or stretch during each team's 2018 season that probably most felt like their fans were getting a root canal while watching said team in action.
Okay.
So I'll start off.
Yeah.
I will probably say LSU's offensive attempts, especially inside the 40 when they actually did get there against Alabama, was probably feeling like a root canal for a lot of LSU fans.
For Kentucky, that Tennessee loss,
yeah, that's never fun.
They lost to Tennessee. And apparently some Kentucky fans out there feel like listening to our show at times can be like a root canal. So
yeah, I would also say maybe the overtimes, by the way, for LSU against Texas A&M, especially after Coach O is drenched in Gatorade and we're still going. And it's just, when will this weird pain inevitability, who knows what will happen, end? I think that's probably there too. I would say, first, there's multiple looking poor against Tennessee root canals on here. I would say Auburn's game against Tennessee at home.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Wow.
Had to have felt like a root canal.
Auburn's whole season was kind of a root canal.
Everything ended well. Like, there was that good washout that you probably got, where you got all the gunk out of your mouth at the end by that the vacuumy type thing.
The swish and spit, yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So I think that Purdue is the swish and spit of Auburn's season. All of
I mean,
here.
You say it ended well, and it did in the Music City Bowl, but before that, they lost handily to their hated rival, Alabama.
Sure,
they beat Liberty, but of course they beat Liberty. They lost to Georgia. They barely beat A&M. They, beat Mississippi before that. Then they lost to Tennessee previous to that. And then they lost to Mississippi State in there. So, yeah, the whole season, at least on this end, trying to predict Auburn football was certainly like a root canal. And watching the ground game was a root canal unto itself.
Yeah, I would say for A&M still not getting over the hump. They had that long road stretch, right? Where they had Kentucky at home, but Arkansas was a neutral site game. South Carolina, Mississippi State, Auburn, all on the road. They lose those final 2 games. Still not able to get over the Mississippi State hump. And then the second half against Auburn. For A&M fans, I think there's your root canal. But again, NC State, a wonderful swish and spit.
Yeah.
A wonderful swish and spit. I'm glad you brought that term to this show. It can only mean we're getting into gross territory.
What about Florida? Florida's an interesting one.
Felipe Franks throwing into the Georgia secondary.
Okay, so you're going very specific.
Yes.
With your example. I think
again, Michigan swish and spit.
I think you almost have to with Florida, because new coach. I think it was a pretty good season for Florida on the whole.
Definitely.
Right? You have to come away from that feeling pretty good. I think initially the loss to Kentucky felt worse than it ended up being, because Kentucky, won 10 games. So it wasn't all that bad of a loss.
No, in retrospect, a totally understandable loss to a very good Kentucky team.
For sure. What else do we got on here?
The end of Mizzou's game against Kentucky, if we're sticking with the Wildcat, where Mizzou definitely should have won.
Okay. What about Alabama?
aside from the national championship, if we're just going to stick with the SEC season for Alabama, the first half of the Georgia game, the SEC championship game, I mean, it's painful to watch Tua hobbling around, getting hit, getting blitzes, not get picked up, throwing interceptions, right? First half of that.
I mean, the thing with Alabama, if we're trying to compare it to dental work, is it's never serious dental work where you actually need Novocaine, right? Like all of their problems end up being cosmetic. Lose like 10 assistant coaches doesn't matter. Have a quarterback who's hurt for pretty much the entire second half of the year doesn't matter.
Right.
You're really splitting hairs if you're trying to find things that Alabama fans are going to treat as root canal.
Georgia special teams play calling is both the root canal for Georgia and the swish and spit for Alabama.
That's right.
So thanks for that call.
Swish and spit could be our new thing.
It has to be in a very specific way to this show. Georgia ends up, I mean, the Georgia root canal is probably the first half of the Texas game. The LSU game was rough, but losing in Death Valley it's nothing that is going to feel consistently terrible and give you nightmares. That was a very good LSU team. I think
I'm looking at Arkansas. Arkansas had a very bad year. 0-8
Arkansas. It was a weekly root canal schedule.
Yeah, 2-10, a tough schedule. I think they were disappointed in Fayetteville by their quarterback play, especially with Chad Morris coming in. I don't know. I at least had an expectation that it would look better than it did, and that was a problem all year long.
Swish and spit was signing day.
Yeah,
a nice class coming in. Swish and spit was signing day there. I talked about the ending of the Mizzou Kentucky game. Vandy. You know you're going into a Vandy season that you have some cracked teeth.
Right.
There's an expectation of there's a work's going to be done. Low point, is probably Georgia, but that's not super
the root canal.
painful.
The root canal was probably watching the end of the Notre Dame game because that game was there for Vanderbilt.
Yes.
It was there for the
That's
taking.
right.
And they could have beaten Notre Dame in South Bend. I believe that game was in South Bend.
Yeah, it was.
So that, that was there and they weren't able to capitalize.
Who are we missing? Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Ole Miss was root canal. It was sort of beginning to end for Ole Miss. There were exciting moments with that receiving core, but you just get the one win is over Arkansas.
Mississippi State on offense. I expected more.
September's Mississippi State offense
was
one prolonged, oh wow, this tooth is gangrenous. And
how deep do we have to drill here, right?
Yes. That I think it was either 13 or 14 combined points against Kentucky and Florida, two totally good teams, but with that type of experience and talent returning. You have 3 points against LSU, 7 Kentucky, 6 Florida, and 0 Alabama, if memory serves.
Right.
Swish and spit was, the ultimate swish and spit is the Egg Bowl. Okay. Ultimate. It's America's swish and spit in so many different ways. I think that about covers it, right?
I think that covers it. So we're gonna cut over to the interview you did with Andy. We'll be back after. But you did a cool thing on the ACC show you did with our friend Chip Patterson from CBS. You're basically having the guest pick a number between 1 and 14, as he did last week, again this week with the SEC. And then you talk about those teams. All too often, we just go in order of finish or in reverse order of finish. This was a little bit more of a democratic way of going about it. True. And I think held interest pretty well, at least through one conference, Autopsy. So we're going to kick it over to Andy Staples from Sports Illustrated, SI.com, SiriusXM, and we'll be back shortly. Enjoy the interview.
All right, I don't make promises I can't keep. So here is Andy Staples from Sports Illustrated. And because, honestly, you know what this episode is about. You know we're doing an SEC autopsy, and we're going to find the rulings. Who better than Andy Staples to figure this out? But because this is not exactly pressing, I saw this recently, and I want you to go further into it because I get a lot of these questions. I'm sure you get a lot of these questions. People travel for college football, and they want to know where to eat. And they ask us these questions. What is your source, I guess other than me on the West Coast, what is your source to figure out where to eat where?
Usually I call someone local.
Okay.
I call someone who lives in the town and I say, what is the place that you don't tell the tourists about because you don't want them overrunning your favorite place?
Right.
And that's how you find Archibald's Ribs in Northport, Alabama. That's how you find Tarahumara's in Norman, which is the best, just regular old Tex-Mex place you'll ever.
Oh.
It looks like the Tex-Mex place in your town, and probably 5 others in your town.
Wow, that's
it's a million times better, and I don't even know how to explain why.
That's a blind spot of mine because I'm a big Mex guy and have not spent enough time in San Antonio or Oklahoma or El Paso, places that really do it right and have places that have been around forever. And I need to fill my life with...
It's a big blind spot for me, too.
Yeah.
My thing for years was it's meat and beans and melted cheese. What possibly could make one better than the other? But you go to this place and you may not be able to describe it because I certainly can't.
Interesting.
But it is significantly better, and I don't know why.
What I think it is a sort of sum of the parts rather than each individual. Like the enchilada that you'll find on a good Tex-Mex plate is fine. The beans you'll find are fine. And I think it's sort of like when your syrup spills over onto the bacon on a breakfast plate, and then you get a little bit of waffle in that bite. It's all about the symphony of flavors, in my mind.
I think that's a good way to put it because, like Tarahumara's in Norman. So great fresh made salsa, which is a big thing for me. Like
huge.
You better have good salsa because, and it better not come from a jar. So that's easy. But the other thing they do is, so when you sit down, they sit the basket of chips in front of you, they sit the salsa in front of you, and they also give you a cup of queso, which I was looking around the first time and I'm like, wait, I didn't order queso. I don't want to pay for queso. And they're like, oh, no. It's included. So apparently, I don't know how this happened, but apparently in Metro Oklahoma City, and for those who don't know, Norman is kind of a bedroom community of Oklahoma City. It's a little bit out, but not far. They apparently at the Tex-Mex places in town, queso is included. I don't know why, and I don't know why no one else does this, but there, it's not extra. So people who aren't from around there are just looking around the table like, what is this madness? Is this witchcraft? And then people from there go to a Mexican place anywhere else, and they're like, wait, where's the queso?
You've grown accustomed to a certain way of life, getting queso on the table immediately.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine if that was somebody on Twitter said it reminded him the first time he got charged for ketchup in London. That he grew up in Oklahoma City, so when he went to another Mexican restaurant and they charged for queso, he's like, wait a second, this is supposed to be free. It's sort of like when Chipotle came in and started charging for chips.
Yes,
I was very anti-Chipotle for years because the idea of paying for tortilla chips just really changed. And listen, I realize when I go to Moe's or wherever, I am paying for the tortilla chips.
Right,
it is included in the price of the
built in. Yep.
But my mind does not know that. My mind does not grasp. When I'm at Chipotle and I have to pay an extra $1.19 or $2.19, it bugs me still.
By the way, I won't claim to be an expert on all things food in Oklahoma, but another thing I do know and consider Oklahoma to be underrated because of it. Do you know what an Oklahoma-style burger is?
The onion burger.
The onion burger. They fry the meat with onions smacked on top of it, so you get the crispy thin burger with crispy onions all at the same time. And how could you eat a burger any other way after doing that?
See, I'm not a big onion person.
Oh, that's right.
So that much onion flavor might be a bit much for me. Although cooked onions, I'm good with. Fried onions, I'm good with. So I'm gonna have to. I have not tried one of the onion burger places. It's one of those I've been like, because of my irrational hatred of onions, I don't know if I should do this because I don't want to say, I don't like this when it's everybody's favorite thing and it's just my weird taste buds. But I probably should try that next time I'm out there.
I like that we've spent a solid 5 minutes talking about the least SEC state in the South and Southwest. And that's a good way.
Hey, the SEC tried to get Oklahoma.
That's true.
They tried really hard.
That's true. And I like that you use the phrase irrational hatred, because at some point you or somebody will write a book called Irrational Hatred about the history of the SEC, and it will do
football
very well.
in the SEC.
Yes,
exactly.
It will do.
That would be a
very
great title for an SEC football book.
Write it down. Put it in. If you're a writer listening to this, if you're Andy Staples considering it, take out your iPhone or whatever, your Google Android phone, put it in your notes. You never know. Let's start here. I have a list of 14 SEC teams with just sort of hazy thoughts and questions about each, not really all put together. And I'm just going to ask you to give me a number between 1 and 14, because it'd be easy to just say, let's start with Alabama. Let's talk about Ed Orgeron. Let's talk about Kirby. This is on you. This is the game show thing we are doing because I can't help but be a game show host. Give me a number between 1 and 14 and imagine that spinning wheel in your head.
You really did miss your calling. I feel like if you'd have been born 25 years earlier, you would have hosted Card Sharks. So, all right, let's do this. Let's play the game.
Let's do it.
Number 7.
Number 7. We go to number 7, and that is going to be Mississippi State. A weird but fun and interesting year. I would say it appears that Mississippi State is in a pretty good place. Defense was great in year 1, but they lose a ton of pieces up front, Jeffrey Simmons, Montez Sweat, whatever, and a lot in the secondary. The offense was somehow all right, even though it overcame maybe the worst passing attack in the conference. So my question is to you.
Well, what it overcame was Joe Moorhead realizing, hey, all these other places I've been, I didn't sort of force anybody into a system.
Yes.
I just built the thing around what they do. And I think he realized he was trying to force Nick Fitzgerald into a system and make him be Trace McSorley, and he's not. And so once they settled on that and realized that, then they could work with some stuff. And I think that changed the season for them. But listen, they have a quarterback. You know, Keaton Thompson is going to be the quarterback. I would argue that he may fit what Joe Moorhead wants better than Nick Fitzgerald did. So I think that is going to be a very good thing for them. You know, as far as defensive line goes, yeah, they lost some special guys, but Mississippi State has always been able to find those guys. I mean, there are really good defensive linemen in the state of Mississippi, either in high schools or in the JUCOs. You should be able to have a good defensive line at Mississippi State without a lot of, you're not really going too far out of your normal recruiting area. So I think that one should maybe not be as good as it was, because those, Jeffrey Simmons and Montez Sweat are really special guys, but they should have enough, back there that, they'll be all right on defense. And I think the offense should be pretty good. I mean, Kylan Hill running the ball and Thompson throwing it. I'll take that. I'll take that next year.
Yeah, especially with there being a big concern about recruiting and Joe Moorhead's not from the South. I think all of those questions were answered pretty emphatically, pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the not from the South thing, like Joe Moorhead's a very personable guy. He's the type of person that can connect with people from anywhere. I don't worry about him not being from the South. I think that's overblown. You either are a person who can recruit or you're not. And that's more of a personality trait than a regional thing.
Fair. Give me a number. 1 and 14.
13.
13. All right. We're going to Auburn. We're really going for it. I like this.
Wow.
Auburn is a team that I think we can all agree, not super stable as a program. As soon as things look good, things go bad.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It is quicksand. So last year starts pretty well with the win over Washington. They look okay. Bad loss. I mean, a heartbreaking loss to who did they lose to? LSU early on. They look pretty terrible against Tennessee and just sort of dicey, but then finish the season super well in the bowl. So if 10 is unbelievably stable and 1 is Auburn, where is Auburn today in late January?
Here's the thing. We're going to pick Auburn to finish like 4th in the West next year. And they're going to win 11 games.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's what happens.
Yep.
When we pick them to have a bad season, they have a great season. When we pick them to have a great season, they have a terrible season and contemplate paying, $32 million buyouts. I don't know why. And I realize they're going to get the bowl bump of all bowl bumps from what they did against Purdue. But I think that was more of a catharsis for the guys that were leaving. of, hey, this season didn't go the way we wanted it to. Can we please go out in style? Can we please just, make this better? But, Gus Malzahn calling plays, I guess I never understood why he stopped.
Yeah.
Because isn't that the thing he was really good at?
Mm-hmm.
So why not continue doing it? And him calling plays in the bowl game certainly worked out well. And that's great, and probably made some people mad. Like, why was there this conflict all season when if you could have done this, why didn't you just do this? So I don't know how that's going to work, but they've just got to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback, and the fact that they've not been particularly active on the transfer market leads me to believe that they feel like they got somebody, and maybe that's Bo Nix. That's the incoming freshman. Maybe they like him. But they had opportunities. They could have gotten Austin Kendall when he was coming from Oklahoma. So I think that tells me they like what they have coming in. Now we'll just have to see if it pans out, because quarterbacks who signed with Gus out of high school have not done particularly well. They've done better with transfers.
And cornerbacks who become quarterbacks. Yeah.
Right.
So, okay.
Now, if there was a corner that they could move to quarterback.
Yes.
A corner at some other school that they could move to quarterback, that would be fantastic. But
it smells on ideal. Yeah.
But look, from a talent standpoint, Auburn looks like, when they get off the bus, they look like LSU, and they look like Alabama, and they look like Georgia. So I don't think they're that far away from being good. And this is what happens with Auburn. That's why, every couple years they flip a switch and suddenly they're great, because they have good players. Right. It's just a matter of getting the chemistry right. So I think, maybe they do get the chemistry right. Maybe having a very clear organizational chart on offense will help them more, because that seems to be a problem for the last couple of years.
Yeah, and their schedule this past year, down the stretch, going to Bama.
It's brutal.
It's so brutal. So it can only improve. I know they open with, I think it's Oregon next year. But down the stretch, they have Georgia and Bama both on the plains.
And I'd rather open with Oregon than play Oregon in November next year. Because I think by October, November, Oregon's going to be really, really tough to beat.
I hope so. I agree. Give me a number.
All right, let's go to number 3.
Number 3 is LSU, who you just mentioned. I think this is my prerogative. I think it'd be dumb to call a 9-3 regular LSU season with an inexperienced transfer quarterback, a sort of new offensive coordinator, wins over Auburn and Georgia and Ole Miss, mind you, and a New Year's 6 win, anything short of a good year. But if the clear formula for winning the SEC West, aside from talent and defense, is being able to stress Alabama vertically, is LSU, are they self-imposing a ceiling?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think their bigger problem against Alabama was in the trenches last year. They just got whipped up front. And I think they're going to be better. And you've got, now 3 years of Ed Orgeron recruiting, basically, because he was the recruiting coordinator for Miles that last year. So you've got 3 years of him recruiting linemen, be they offensive or defensive. He knows what he's looking for. I do think they're going to be better up front, which they need. And in terms of guys coming back, I thought they came out fairly well on that. Normally LSU does not. Normally LSU loses everybody that they could possibly lose. And so, like, getting Fihoko back, that's a big deal. That's a big presence in the middle of your defensive line that you don't just replace very easily. So I think they're going to be pretty good next year. Now, here's the problem. Their schedule is always brutal, and they still play in the West. We think Auburn's going to be better, although Auburn has to go to them. But they've got to go to LSU's got to go to Tuscaloosa. Florida, we think, is going to be a little bit better, and they were pretty good this year, and they're coming to Baton Rouge. So, yeah, it's going to be tough, but it's always going to be tough if you're LSU. I think
they go to Texas, right? Texas is week 2, yeah. And DK, yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, listen, they've got what they need now to be a very good team. I don't know if they have the roster to beat Alabama yet. I'm not sure if they're there yet. but it feels like they're getting closer.
I think that's reasonable. I still want like the Joe Burrow thing. Like I feel like he is probably the best okay quarterback in the country. And I just want a little bit more because there's so much speed and there's usually so much talent.
You may get a little bit more because remember Joe Burrow.
True.
Where did Joe Burrow have spring practice last year? In Columbus. So, he's got a full offseason this year to really get to know those receivers, and he's not getting thrown into this. So I think they're going to be fine. I don't know, because of the schedule, I'm not sure the record's going to be appreciably different.
Right.
But they, and that'll be the thing. There'll be pressure on Orgeron in at some point if they don't take that next step of winning that game they're not necessarily supposed to win. And that would be the Alabama game probably. So they've got to break through at some point, but then that's sort of the ballad of everybody in the SEC West. Eventually you have to break through and beat Alabama, and of those teams, only Auburn's been able to do it.
And we're also talking about an LSU team that was like an 11-hour game away from being 10-2.
Exactly. We should not downplay that either, because remember, this is the team that people were saying, oh, they're going to be 5-7 and Orgeron's going to get fired. No. Orgeron's doing a good job.
Yeah, for sure.
That is a good program. They are on the right direction. They just now need to begin competing for SEC and national titles, which is the hardest step to take. So good luck with that.
Okay, good luck. Give me a number between 1 and 14 that you haven't yet.
8.
Ooh, 8. This is the earliest anybody will ever talk about the Vanderbilt Commodores. And I think that's wonderful because the Doors, they kind of quietly had a totally fine year. Kyle Shermer, one of the best, 5-6 quarterbacks in the conference. Keyshawn Vaughn was a wrecking ball. And I hate questions like this. I promise you I do. But maybe there's something on the bone. Is having and blowing late leads to Kentucky, Notre Dame, Mizzou, and I think Florida, all were like blown leads, indicative of anything?
Here's the problem. This was your year with the senior quarterback and the basically fourth-year starter.
Yeah.
So now it's if you're Alabama or Auburn or LSU or Georgia or one of those programs and you lost a significant amount of leadership or experience, you can still grow on that. The problem is when you're a Vandy, when you're an Arkansas, when you're a Missouri, something like that, you're probably going to take a step back just because the roster can only be as good as that every couple of years. So I'm not sure how much you can build on that if you're Vandy. Now, getting Vaughn back is big.
Yes. The
dude averaged 7.9 yards a carry, and he was incredible in that bowl game. So I think that's a big deal. They have some good pieces, but it's going to feel like starting all over again because you're starting all over again at quarterback.
Yeah, got to make it count with those senior classes in the way that like Kentucky did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that's the thing. They sort of provided the model for how you're supposed to have one of those seasons, and you've got to strike when you have that kind of experience. That's the hard part. I mean, and look, it's Vanderbilt. It's the toughest job in the league. Nobody's expecting them to win the East. Nobody's expecting them to win national championships. It's not like the other jobs. It's just, hey, can you be kind of good every once in a while? And they were all right. And maybe they can be all right again.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go to Kentucky just because you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Is Kentucky in a better place? And I assume the answer is yes than Vanderbilt, just because of what Mark Stoops has been able to do on the recruiting trail. But I don't want to ask if it's repeatable 2018 because that's a tough ask. But in terms of infrastructure and laying a foundation, are they at least at a point where an 8-win goal is not crazy year in and year out?
That's not crazy.
Okay.
You go any higher than that and you are crazy.
Okay.
That's my thing is I don't want Kentucky fans to start using this past season as a weapon against Mark Stoops, because that happens sometimes with fan bases when you have a team sort of outperform expectations and then they start saying, well, why can't you do that every year? You can't do that every year because you're Kentucky. You're not going to do that every year. You're not going to have that special a season every year. This is the sort of thing that you have to cycle up to. Listen, they had a roster with a great running back in Benny Snell, a great offensive line. And that's the sort of thing you have to build to. That offensive line they don't show up, just, hey, we're going to throw all these guys in as starters together and they're going to be great. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't even work that way at Alabama or Georgia. So it certainly isn't going to work that way at Kentucky. That took years to put together, and it's going to take, another couple of years to cycle up to another type of team like this. It also helps to have a Josh Allen that everybody kind of missed on defense, who just wrecks opposing offenses. But that's the deal. These are good recruiters. They understand what it takes to build a good roster. But because it's Kentucky and because nobody's perfect, you're not going to be able to have that kind of roster every season. As good of recruiters as this bunch is, that's asking too much. So if they are a team that is 7 or 8 regular season wins and then a bowl game every year, you should be very happy with that. That's a good place for Kentucky to be. And then every once in a while you have a season like this where you can win double-digit games. And I think they sort of showed you the model. Now it's up to the fan base to understand that is the model, that it is every few years. It's not every year. So don't kill those guys if they go 7-5 this year.
Correct. And I will say they did a really good job of taking advantage, and this is something we mentioned with Vanderbilt, of that year with Florida with a new coach, with Tennessee with a new coach, with a weird South Carolina year.
They didn't really take advantage of Tennessee.
They did. They did not. Excuse me. You're right. But in terms of, okay, we have a bunch of seniors and we are not in the strongest SEC East ever, it was a great time to take advantage.
Right. And that's the thing. Look, the East is going to get harder. Georgia's going to be better than it was this year. Tennessee should be better than it was. Florida will be better than it was. And so there are going to be losses where you had wins, in a couple spots. But that doesn't mean you can't be an above average team and then build to another great season. It's doable. I think this is a really good model that they've set forth. And they seem to be pretty patient with Mark Stoops, which I like. Mitch Barnhart is an AD. I mean, he's been around the block a lot of times. So he's not going to be one of those crazy, hey, you didn't win 11 games this year, you're gone. That's not going to be his style. So that's the good news for Kentucky is they're going to be managed properly. And listen, this staff's good. They seem to be doing the things that make them want to stay. Enjoy it, Kentucky fans. Enjoy it.
Give me a number.
2.
All right. We're going to Georgia. If my calculations, I'm not very good at math, are correct. So they end their year losing a winnable Bama SEC championship, losing Justin Fields, looking pretty outmatched in the Sugar Bowl by the Big 12 runner-up, losing both coordinators for somewhat reasonable reasons. And now that they're measuring themselves very clearly against Alabama, what is the big reason to believe in Kirby 3.0?
That they've been right there each of the last 2 years. And they shouldn't, given what they lost from 2017 to 2018, should not have been right there this past year, but they were. And now the coaching staff has to avoid some of the in-game mistakes it made against Alabama, because I think as in terms of off the field recruiting, culture, program, all that other stuff, they're doing what they need to do. Now they just need to figure out how to beat them on the field. And one way to do that is when your starting quarterback is having the game of his life, don't take him out twice in the same series to put in the guy who you're praying won't transfer. If he's going to transfer over that, let him. It'll be okay, because you already have a quarterback who took you to a national title game and had you up on Alabama in the SEC championship game. Maybe ride him. I realize that's not the popular thing, that he doesn't look like Justin Fields and doesn't have the same athletic ability as Justin Fields. He's not as tall. He's not as big. But guess what? Jake Fromm wins. And there's a lot of programs out there that can't seem to find any quarterbacks who can win. So you've got one. Enjoy it. Now, they've just got to figure out how to get over that hump against Alabama. They're going to do it. I know everybody's like, oh, Kirby showed, he just can't hang with Nick Saban on game day as a game day coach. No. He will break through. They're doing too many of the right things to not break through. And I think this team's going to be better next year than it was this year. I just, that offensive line is going to be fantastic. I know they lost a bunch of players. Obviously for Isaac Nada, and you look at what the NFL is doing offensively, you have to go. Yes. But like Elijah Holyfield, I think that's a case of looking at the depth chart, looking at Zamir White maybe coming back healthy and going, I don't know that I'm going to have as big of a role next year. So maybe I go to the NFL. They've got some players on this team, and I think they're going to be able to block really well. The D line will be older and more experienced, which was a big issue last year. They never really found a replacement for John Atkins. They're always going to be able to find corners. They're always going to be able to find pass rushers. That they live in the best recruiting area in the country. They really do. I mean, players from Georgia are athletic. They're well coached in high school. You have pretty much everything you want. It's just a matter of getting them. They've been getting them. So now they have to beat Alabama on the field. And the tricky part of that is they have to win enough games to get to Alabama. They're going to have to beat Florida again. They're going to have to. They get Texas A&M next year, so they're going to have to deal with those teams. But if they can do that and get another game with Alabama, they have been right there. They just have to get over the hump, and I think they can do it. You keep playing them dead even for 58 minutes or 59 minutes, or in one case like 63 minutes, you're going to beat them eventually.
In a weird way, I think the Justin Fields thing and the way he was used and the way he was brought in sort of nonsensically at times, I almost think that is going to be the thing that cements the sort of ruthlessness gene in Kirby, that he's never going to placate anymore. And that's the thing. He's always going to play the best player no matter what.
Right. You have to be ruthless, especially as you pick a quarterback. And one of the interesting conversations I had during this season was some of the Ohio State beat writers. This was right after Meyer had retired, I think. They said, what was the difference between Meyer and Saban? And I said, the difference between Meyer and Saban is that Saban would have started Dwayne Haskins over JT Barrett senior year.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
No, I think if you look across college football, the guys who have really established themselves as the consistent double-digit winners, it's understanding you're going to hurt feelings, no matter if it's a freshman or a senior.
Well, and Meyer was a consistent double-digit winner. He just kind of did it his own way.
Right.
And one of those things was when he found a guy he really liked at quarterback, he was not moving off him.
Give me a number.
All right, let's do number 5.
Number 5 is South Carolina, your home state, if I'm not mistaken.
All right.
Here we go.
Go Cox. I used to have a hat that played the fight song.
Really?
Yeah, you press the bill and it.
It would have been better if it played Sandstorm, but I'll accept it.
Sandstorm hadn't been recorded yet, and actually, Sandstorm. It took 9 years after Sandstorm was recorded for the students of the University of South Carolina to discover that it existed, even though the rest of the country had been listening to it when it was recorded.
There's a good untapped market of like Euro techno that's played by marching bands, that's played in stadiums well after the fact that they were popular. And I appreciate that.
Darude has probably moved to a place in Charleston.
Mm-hmm. They have to.
He's got to be the second most popular person in the state of South Carolina behind Dabo.
I think that's right. And will never buy a mojito again in the state of South Carolina. All right. So Gamecocks are every game is close, it seemed, other than maybe the Clemson game at the end and the Georgia game. So my sympathies to South Carolina fans for all of the heart attacks. I didn't watch a ton of South Carolina, but for a Will Muschamp team, what happened to the defense? And is it just a bad injury luck sort of blip?
I think probably.
Okay.
Because they overachieved their first 2 years under Muschamp. And that has never been an issue, whether he was the coach at Florida or the defensive coordinator at Texas. Finding players on that side of the ball and then putting them in the right spots on that side of the ball has never been an issue. So I think we can look at this as an anomaly and just say, all right, they're going to be better defensively. Now, what does that mean in terms of where they land in the SEC East is another story entirely, because I think they're still going to be looking up at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance they're looking up at Florida. Then what happens if Tennessee's better. They can't seem to beat Kentucky. Now, eventually they're gonna turn that around, but they just really cannot seem to figure out how to beat Kentucky. So, this is a team that could be the second or third best team in the East, but they got to figure some stuff out.
I think that's right. And the offense did take a nice step under a first-year coordinator, and they'll have a senior quarterback next year. So they're at least poised to, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, look better and maybe finish games out that they didn't in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue with them. I mean, they always get Texas A&M out of the West, so that's not a pleasant thing this year because I think Texas A&M is going to be better. But I think they're probably due to. It's weird. We have not seen a South Carolina team under Will Muschamp play to its potential. It's either played well above it the first 2 years, well below it this year. So if they play to potential, then you're talking about, I would think, an 8 or 9 win season.
Yeah.
I think that would be about right, depending on who, a couple of toss-ups. So, I mean, if you're South Carolina, I think you should be happy with that.
I think that's right.
I know they got spoiled with their 11-win seasons under Steve Spurrier and beating Clemson every year, but that's not going to happen anymore. Steven
Garcias do not grow on trees. That's just a fact.
That's exactly right. You can't just find a Steven Garcia anywhere, or a Jadeveon Clowney or a Marcus Lattimore.
Correct. Give me a number.
And honestly, those players are going to Clemson now.
They are going to Clemson, so we might as well just give me another number before South Carolina fans become even more despondent.
Sorry. 9.
Let's talk Florida. That worked out nicely. I would say all things considered for a first-year coach, really good opening year. LSU, Florida State, Michigan wins. Hard to be disappointed with any of that. Only one really indefensible loss in Mizzou. And Mizzou is probably a second-tier SEC team. They just weren't.
Mizzou was kind of due at that point. You knew they were going to do that to somebody, and Florida just drew the unlucky short straw. This is the most optimism I have noticed in Gainesville in golly, since Tebow was the quarterback.
Jim McElwain really drained the place. Wow.
Well, even the Muschamp years, even after that really good 2012 season, nobody was particularly optimistic because of the way it ended. They got hammered by Louisville, and it was like, was this thing a mirage or what?
Right.
And so I think they feel like there's definitely forward momentum. Now, here's the deal. You have to build on that. And that's Dan Mullen's next step. You've got to now be able to win some games that actually they're similar position to LSU, where you are kind of where you need to be at this point in your tenure. At some point, you will be asked to ascend to that national title contender level, because Florida and LSU expect more than, we've talked about Kentucky and South Carolina. Those places should not expect that. At LSU and Florida, they can expect that and do. So I don't think that's going to be expected of Dan Mullen this season, but it will be by 2020. So, better keep stepping that direction. And, we'll see what happens. I thought what they did with Felipe Franks over the year was really good. I mean, that is coaching right there. What you saw in terms of his mentality changing over the year. And I think the South Carolina game really turned things for him. I think he realized, wait a second, this can be my team. I don't have to just be a placeholder until they find their quarterback that they recruited. I can be the guy here. And so we'll see if he can hold off a challenge from Emory Jones, because my guess is Emory Jones will be given every opportunity to win the starting job in the spring practice and in preseason camp. But I think now that's going to be more of a competition.
How far away with whoever behind center, whether it's Emory Jones or Felipe Franks, are they from Georgia, though? That's the measuring stick.
That is the measuring stick. And I don't know if it's that side of the ball that you need to worry about as much, which is strange again when we're talking about Florida. But their defensive recruiting it tailed off so much under McElwain that they're very thin on that side of the ball. You saw it last year, like when Marco Wilson went down. They're not as... remember how deep they were when Muschamp was
Nickelbacks were getting drafted,
all the defensive players? Yeah, it was crazy. So they're not there. they got to get back to that. And that's something I think they can do. I think this staff is capable of recruiting that way and building that depth, but that's not something that happens in 1 year. So they are going to be very dependent on good injury luck defensively to stay afloat. It will get hard for them if they have a few key injuries, especially in the secondary. And if they can get through this year, I think then they'll be more toward the depth level they need to be at, where it'll be more normal for top tier SEC team, where if you lose a guy, okay, it stinks you lost a guy, but there's another guy who's pretty capable behind him.
Yeah, all sounds reasonable. 1, 4, 10, 11, 12, 14.
All right, let's go to 14.
Let's go 14.
Woo, pig.
Oh, see, but I didn't do that. I went against expectations.
Oh, it's not in order of finish?
It is not in order of finish. We are going to Mizzou, because I'm glad we are, because we just mentioned them as being due to beat somebody interesting and big, and they did. There's a good case to be made that Barry Odom is the ultimate second half coach after his 2 seasons just dominating late October and November.
Every first time, every young writer, when they're writing their first few game stories, does their Tale of Two Cities lead.
Yes.
Barry Odom's Captain Tale of Two Cities lead.
Barry Odom shows up to give the book report without having read the book. And he was like, well, there were 2 cities. There was a very grand tale that, had a number of themes, man versus man.
But it's almost like someone is feeding him the book as he goes. Yes. And by the time he finishes, he's an expert.
Yes. This is true. And I guess the only parallel to be drawn here is the end of the Kentucky game being just a total mess and not at all Mizzou's fault. So they should have finished the season, winning 5, 6 in a row. Is there actual momentum? I know they've recruited, all things considered, pretty well, not for SEC standards, but I think that's a top 30-ish recruiting class right now. Is there, in your mind, an ability for Mizzou, not to obviously get back to winning the SEC East necessarily, but sort of being that second-ish tier in the SEC consistently?
Well, yeah. I mean, they have a quarterback right now. They have Kelly Bryant. So we know what Kelly Bryant can do. And, if you put Kelly Bryant against Alabama, you might have an issue, but against the teams in the SEC East, sans Georgia maybe, they can win. So, they get West Virginia. West Virginia is probably not going to be what they were. Well, they're definitely not going to be what they were last year. I'd be more. It's funny because they were going to play Neil Brown one way or the other. Like if Neil Brown were still at Troy, I'd be picking Troy to win that game in Columbia, Missouri next year.
Wow.
But he's not at Troy anymore. And now I'm picking Neil Brown to lose in Columbia, Missouri with West Virginia, as strange as that sounds. But no, I think they have a manageable schedule. Now it really comes down to what do you do in the games you can win in the East? Like Kentucky. They should have won the Kentucky game last year. Can you go to Lexington and win? You get South Carolina at home. They should have beaten South Carolina in South Carolina last year. Mm-hmm. Can you beat them at home? From the West, they get Ole Miss. They should be able to handle them. We'll see with the 2 new coordinators at Ole Miss, but Missouri should be able to deal with it. They have a very favorable schedule. And I think we could be looking at Missouri as, sort of like we were talking about South Carolina. This is a team that could be in that middle tier, but they have to win the toss-ups.
Right.
And so like that South Carolina game early on is a big toss-up for them. They play them week 4 in Columbia, Missouri. And you win that game, you probably got all kinds of momentum heading in the rest of your SEC schedule. Lose that game and then you gotta recalibrate your expectations. Now here's the thing. They can't be the Missouri of the last 2 years if they want this to work. If they can start strong this year, the schedule lends itself to them starting strong.
Yes.
So if they can start strong and then have the same kind of finishing kick that they've had, this could be a really good year for them. But they've got to figure out how to put it together early in a season, and they've yet to do that under Barry Odom.
I think that's all. Yeah, I'm excited. I think they have the best returning tight end probably in the conference.
Yeah,
in Albert O. So I mean, there are pieces there that can be game changers.
Yeah, no, and Kelly Bryant has been in these games. There's nothing that that any of the teams on their schedule are going to throw at him that he has not seen.
Ah, yes. Derek Dooley excitement. 1, 4, 10, 11.
You know what?
Yeah. Sorry, he did
funny,
well.
Before we move on, he did well.
He did do well.
I don't know that we're allowed to make fun of him as much anymore.
It's more of like the surprise at actually saying Derek Dooley excitement as being an actual real thing.
All right. What are our numbers that we have left?
1, 4, 10, 11, 12.
12.
Texas A&M. Very clearly, I mean, after the best Clemson loss of the year, probably at full health, they beat LSU. They win their bowl game the way that they did. They're going to come into the season with a ton of probably top 10, top 12 type of hype conversation.
They're going to get the biggest bowl bump.
I love it
off
so
that
much.
Gator Bowl.
Oh, it's going to be brutal.
It's going to be so enormous, and their schedule is awful.
It's rough.
Their schedule is so hard.
Oh, they could be a 9-win team that finishes 7-5, or a 10-win team that finishes 7-5.
Yes, they could be as good or better than they were this year, and the results not bear that out at all.
Are you a Kellen Mond believer?
I don't know if I'm a believer, but I like him.
Okay,
I liked him. You know, when Sumlin was still there and he played against Alabama and played them as about as tough as anybody could.
Yes,
I thought, you know, this guy. He's definitely got something to him. It's just a matter of, you know, will he put it all together? And then, of course, he has to learn a new offense and everything else. Mm-hmm. So I do think they have what they need at quarterback. And they got players. I mean, that's one thing Jimbo Fisher said when he got there is he's pleasantly surprised because the cupboard was not bare. Someone left them playing players, and they've obviously picked up, you know, right where they left off recruiting. So this is the issue, though. I mean, like, you go to Clemson, everybody's going to pencil that in as a loss, and if you win that game, obviously everything changes. But you know, you go to Clemson, and then week 4 you got Auburn coming to you in a game where you finally the home team finally won the game last year, but in very odd fashion. Like A&M just gave it away. So does the road team start winning again? And this is a series that, I think, other than the year Manziel came in and just clobbered Auburn, I think it's been pretty close most years. So, and that's your intro to SEC play, and then it just sort of rolls from there. So, and then you got to go to Athens late in the season. Like your final 2 games are at Georgia and at LSU.
That's brutal.
That's brutal.
I'm excited to see it.
But
yes.
That said, in a vacuum, I think they're a better team than they were this year. I think that's Jimbo Fisher's going to do a good job there.
And I think year 2 of Mike Elko is going to be enormous.
Yes. I mean, you know, getting them back with the kind of athletes that they can recruit, getting them back to playing good defense, I think that is a bigger key to consistency than anything else for A&M.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm excited to see them. 1, 4, 10, 11.
All right. 11.
11. Here is your woo pig. This is the easiest question, or at least the most simple question and simple thought. Arkansas was very bad in 2018. Is there reason to believe they'll simply be bad? I know they get an average American Conference quarterback who's familiar with their offense.
He knows the offense, I guess.
Yeah, he was pretty average. Can they ascend to just below average?
I don't know, because they're still trying to remake the roster into what Chad Morris wants it to look like, because that, you know, Brett Bielema didn't have a roster like that. But I don't know, because A&M's, like I said, A&M's better. LSU's probably better. Ole Miss will be better. Alabama's Alabama. Auburn is, you know, we're predicting Auburn to not be good, which means they'll kill everyone.
That's rough.
I don't know where the wins are. I just don't. Where are the? Who do you beat?
I'm pulling up their schedule right now.
You know, they play Missouri at the end of the season, and we know what Missouri does to teams at the end of the season.
This is true. They can win. Oh God, this is rough. You're right. I'm not a good enough detective. They have Portland State, Colorado State, Ole Miss, San Jose State.
Yeah, like you should beat Colorado State this year.
You should beat San Jose State. Yeah, but
in the SEC, I don't know. I mean, and they actually could be a little bit better than they were, and I still don't know what happens. I still don't know where the wins are.
There's a
because
chance
the teams that they have to beat get better.
They could start 4-0 and finish 4-8.
It's entirely possible.
It's a rough way to go through life. But yeah, I mean, they recruited relatively well, all things considered, that what you're recruiting to and what you have to replace. There's opportunity, certainly. And it just does not feel like 2019 is okay, we're going to be frisky and nobody wants to play us, which is certainly the first step for a competitive Arkansas team.
Well, that's the thing. At what point? Now, this is the year when Morris was at SMU, when we looked at it and went, I don't know where the wins are, and they wound up beating Houston. I think they ended up going 4-8 or 5-7, and then the turnaround was completed the following year. So maybe he just has some year two magic that we don't know about.
It's possible. It's wait and see for me.
And I don't think when Arkansas cleaned house and got rid of Jeff Long and Brett Bielema, I don't think the people in making the decisions and writing the checks were fully appreciative of how hard the job is.
Yeah, I think that's right. 1, 4, or 10?
10.
Let's go 10. I love this offseason. I don't know if it's going to do anything. I don't know if it's going to be fun, but I love it so far. Ole Miss had a nightmare of a year on defense. They win one SEC game, but make probably the splashiest duo of coordinator hires in Rich Rod and Mike McIntyre, at least I guess in name. Are those two, in a position at all to succeed?
Here's the thing. There have been athletes on Ole Miss's defense.
True.
Recently. And I realize everybody's going to go, well, that's why they have NCAA violations and all that. Yeah, they got athletes pretty much across the roster. Mm-hmm. It's been a case of putting those athletes in the proper positions defensively. So maybe McIntyre's that guy, although I would argue that his greatest success at Colorado came when Jim Leavitt was running his defense. And then once Jim Leavitt was gone, then it wasn't that good anymore.
Right.
So, we'll see. I definitely think Rich Rod has a little more to work with. I realize they don't have the best receiving core in America anymore like they did, but Matt Corral could be a good quarterback. Mm-hmm. We'll see. The few times he got put in last year, he seemed to perform. So I think he's got a better shot of early success than McIntyre does. The thing is, there's got to be improvement or they're all gone.
Yeah.
They're going to clean house if there's not, because Matt Luke's an interim who got the full-time job. He's not going to get the same amount of time someone who was hired from outside would get. So they had better get better quickly. And, again, this is just the same thing we were talking about with Arkansas. Where are the wins? You'll beat Arkansas. I think they should be competitive with Mississippi State.
Yeah.
But I worry about them against LSU, against Auburn, against Alabama. I mean, that's 3 right there.
Yeah, I would say with
A&M and
yeah. I mean, who do they? So they have LSU, A&M. They have Vandy. They should be able to be competitive against Vandy again. They get Cal, which is
they should be able to beat Vandy.
I love that they're playing Cal. I love that you have a Berkeley Oxford series. But yeah, I think they can probably aspire to, we're going to put points on everybody. You're going to have to outscore us. And many and most will, but I think they can aspire to that 2005-6 Texas Tech level.
And I think 6-6 should make you happy in terms of improvement.
Yeah.
It won't make anybody happy there, but I think it should.
I mean, listen, if they beat Mississippi State, everybody will be happy.
No, that's the funny thing is they can be 5-6 going into that game, win that game, and
get bowl eligible. Yeah, success.
We'll see. At Memphis as a season opener, I don't like for them.
1 or 4?
4.
All right, Alabama, which means I made Tennessee number 1, which felt right for some sort of twisted reason. So Alabama, I did trick you. Aside from let's call it the clear most important reason for the manner and very public way in which the Tide lost, which is Clemson's excellence, what was it, I guess, if anything, internally about the 2018 team that could have contributed to that sort of out of character beat down?
Well, I don't think it was something that happened in 2018. I think it was when they were recruiting corners. And both of them were going after Justin Ross. Clemson and Alabama were both going after Justin Ross, and Auburn was also going after him. Justin Ross picked Clemson. If Justin Ross picks Alabama, then that result is not the same. There's not a wins above replacement receiver for Clemson that you can throw in there. Maybe it's T. Higgins, maybe not though, because remember, if you don't have Justin Ross, you can put a better corner on T. Higgins, which they did put a better corner on T. Higgins. Justin Ross was the one they kind of left, playing against their not as good corners, and
right.
You saw what he did to them. And I don't think they're going to find many situations where they face another team that is recruited as well or better than they have. They're just not going to. There's nobody else like that. So I think they're going to be fine in the SEC, except when they ultimately play Georgia in Atlanta,
right?
And I think that's going to be a really fun game, just like it has been the last 2 times they played in Atlanta. But I think they're going to be okay. Everybody looks at the score of that game and the fact that the whole staff has turned over. Well, the whole staff has turned over the last couple of years, and they've still managed to be good. As long as Nick Saban's there, they're going to be good. Now, does this portend a time when Alabama is not the dominant program in college football and not the dominant program in the SEC? Maybe. I mean, look. Nick Saban eventually will retire, and then they won't be anymore. So, but I think as long as he's there, they have to be the favorite, and you have to assume that they are going to be the best team on any given Saturday in an SEC game. So, I think the downfall, and everybody loves to write the dynasties over columns. Don't do it yet.
No,
don't do it. Save that for later. It's not time.
It did feel different though, didn't it?
It did feel different because we've never seen them get beat like that.
Right.
Every other team has gotten beaten like that. We have not seen a Nick Saban Alabama team get beaten like that. And so it feels different because it's a kind of vulnerability we've seen from them that we didn't think existed.
It's so strange.
But that said, Clemson's the only team capable of exposing that vulnerability. There's nobody in the SEC capable of it, because if Georgia was capable of it, it would have done it.
Nobody has that combination of quarterback and continuity and talent level and culture to go into a game like that fearlessly.
Georgia could,
for sure could.
Maybe December 2019 or December 2020, Georgia's at that point. But nobody's there yet in the SEC.
It's incredible that we're in a time where there are, at least right now, 2 teams nationally that have gotten this close to Alabama. There's always been like that one, or like the Ole Miss offense this year, or a freak South Carolina year, but there's never been the infrastructure. It seems to me that there are those 2 teams that are basically, if not on Alabama's level.
Yes. And so that's good for college football.
Yes.
That there are those teams, and it will make things interesting. It makes Nick Saban's job a little bit harder. But the thing is, they still have Tua. They still have all those receivers. They've still recruited well. There will be a Quinnen Williams type who you don't know about, who only the recruitniks know about, who will be a household name come October. They're going to rinse and repeat, and they're still going to be really good.
If there is an internal downfall, because I know you don't see it coming right now, is it only Nick Saban retiring, or is it Scott Cochran leaving? Is there anything internal that
Scott Cochran leaving would be a huge thing?
Yeah.
I think I've
strength and conditioning
make more than the coordinators. Yeah. That he's more important than either coordinator. And it's funny, he's not even the highest paid strength coach in America.
Wow.
The guy at Iowa is the highest paid.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean I think he is the second most important person in that organization behind Nick Saban. And when they kept him away from Georgia, they kept themselves atop the SEC a little bit longer.
It's amazing, that kind of impact, but it makes sense because he has so much face time. He is the good cop, and he has so much face time with the team all year long.
He interacts with the players more than any other coach. He is the guy. So, you don't have him, then you don't. Does the message Saban wants to get across? Because Saban's big thing is messaging. It's all about, here's what I need them to understand this week. And it's not just game weeks. It's this random week in January. Here's what I need them to understand. Scott Cochran is the guy who makes sure that message gets through.
Incredible. Yeah. Final team, Tennessee, our headliner. For all the goodwill of beating a good Kentucky team and a pretty good Auburn team on the road, they finished 2-7. Those are the 2 Power 5 wins of the year for Tennessee. So outside of the South Carolina collapse, the rest of them were uncompetitive losses. The good news is recruiting, transfers, returning guys, Jim Chaney, I guess. What is the case for Tennessee, consistently improving bowl team?
I think that's probably the right tack to take, is consistently improving bowl team, not SEC East challenger.
Threat,
They're not there yet. And it's going to take them a little bit. But the Chaney hire, I think, is a good one. You know, you look at when he was there before, what he did with Kiffin. He turned Jonathan Crompton into a guy who got drafted.
I still have my doubts that actually happened. Insane.
It happened, I promise.
Yeah. Oh.
There's YouTube clips of it.
There's proof. There's receipts.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I do think that's a really good hire because Chaney seems to have the temperament to work, with those. And look, Chaney just worked with Kirby Smart for a few years. He can work with Jeremy Pruitt. They're similar guys, they're similarly demanding. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. And, they don't have bad players. And I think Jeremy Pruitt is the type of recruiter who understands what he needs, understands, the question with Jeremy Pruitt is knowing he can't get the same kind of guys that Alabama and Georgia can always get. How does he kind of reevaluate recruits? How does he decide who's a take and who's not? Because you're not going to get your ideal wish list every time like you did when you were at Alabama. So it's really more of a test of him as a recruiter. But my guess, just given his history, is that because he's never stopped recruiting the same high schools. If you think about it, he's gone from Alabama to Florida State to Georgia to Alabama to Tennessee. He's still recruiting all the same high schools in Georgia and Tennessee and Alabama and Florida that he always did. So he's got a good network and a good understanding, going back to when these players were in 8th grade, of what they can and can't do. So I think that bodes well for Tennessee, that he's going to be able to stock the roster the way it needs to be stocked. Then it's just a matter of them putting it together on the field. I mean, I thought this team was wildly inconsistent last year. I mean, that's not really a news flash, but you go from that Florida game where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong to the end of the season where, for the most part, it seemed like they had cohesive game plans, that the players didn't quit. I mean, I think they're on the right track. I just don't think it's going to be easy because, unfortunately for them, Kirby Smart is building a monster at Georgia and Dan Mullen is doing a good job at Florida. And that is going to make it where... And then you got Will Muschamp at South Carolina with what we talked about earlier. If they even perform up to expectations, they're at least the level of Tennessee and probably better.
Right.
And then there's Mark Stoops at Kentucky. So I think there's some pretty good coaches in the East. And I think that's the thing Tennessee is going to run up against, where it will take some time to get them to where they're competitive at the top.
Yeah, that sounds right. That is... I'm really hoping for the best because I've liked the best of Jarek Guarantano. I know that the transfers coming in, there's some Aubrey Solomon coming in from Michigan.
His arm is off the charts.
It's ridiculous.
But it's, it can't just be a great arm. There's a lot of other factors involved too.
Okay. So I feel good about all of this. I'm glad we went through the 14 teams the way that we did. And here's my final question for you before we let everybody go. We always seem to talk about food because, of course, we do. Give me something non-food that you've consumed, whether it's an album, whether it's a TV show, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book or a graphic novel or whatever, that you can recommend to people as an off-season something.
Well, I'll tell you what. I saw the first episode of Black Monday on Showtime. That show's gonna be awesome. Don
what is
Cheadle.
Black Monday?
It's a period piece set in 1987.
The stock market
and 87.
stuff.
Yeah, Black Monday, the stock market crash in 87, and it's about how it happened. It's a fictional story of how it happened, and it's a pure comedy. It is hysterical. They have this guy playing the Lehman Brothers. He plays both Lehman Brothers.
Okay,
just hand him the Emmy now. But Cheadle's fantastic. So yeah, the first episode I was in. There's a great montage set to Don Henley's New York Minute.
Okay.
It's tremendous.
Oh, looks like it's Seth Rogen is the executive producer, Don Cheadle. Yeah, I'm totally in.
Yep.
I'm gonna watch this very soon.
Yes.
Great recommendation.
Everybody get on board.
Cool. Andy Staples, thank you very much for your time. If people want to follow you, follow Andy on Twitter, on SI, read everything he writes. He writes a weekly column called Punt, Pass, and Pork. What is the single best way that if people want to consume your wares, you're on Sirius XM, what is the easiest way?
Well, just go to my Twitter feed, Andy_Staples, and I put most of that stuff there. And of course, subscribe to SiriusXM because not just because I have a show on it, but because there's all kinds of great music channels, Howard Stern, great interviews. So it's the best $13 a month you can spend.
Done. Do it. Listen, you get Andy Staples, and your show is what, 3 hours long?
1 to 4 p.m. Eastern every day on channel 84, which is the channel devoted to college sports. That's right. And we don't just have one. We have 6 channels devoted to college sports because mine is the main college sports channel, but we also have one devoted to each power conference.
This is true. And if you already follow Andy on Twitter, you know that when he starts tweeting during hour 3 of his show, it's basically just like, what was the best arranged dance from a movie in 1984? It goes to weird places, and
basically what that means is my co-host Jason Horowitz has given me some idea about something, and I need to crowdsource it.
Yes, done. Okay, Andy, thank you very much for your time. Follow Andy everywhere he goes, and we will speak soon.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, Dan, there you go. Andy Staples, Sports Illustrated, Sirius XM, longtime best bud of the podcast. What did you learn from talking to him that you didn't know going into that interview, that conversation?
Didn't know where to get Tex-Mex in the greater Oklahoma City area.
Okay, important.
Tara Humara, whatever. I now know to go to there, thanks to Andy and George Schroeder. It's one of those... The points that Andy made, I guess, particularly, I'm very quick to say, "Ooh, Georgia, is there an opening where Georgia is losing coordinators and all these transfers? What is, do we have faith that Kirby Smart essentially is Nick Saban, that he can weather anything thanks to his system and thanks to so much talent?" And I thought Andy did a good job of pumping the brakes on any concern about Georgia with the way that they finished their season, Justin Fields and the Sugar Bowl, everything like that. I thought that was probably pretty smart. I liked his optimism about Mizzou. I thought that was pretty smart, given that they are recruiting on a somewhat respectable level. It's a top 30, 35 class. Quarterback play has been good, and they're just very quietly in that SEC second tier. I think that's all correct. Texas A&M as a danger, if not for their schedule. I don't know if you've looked ahead to Texas A&M's schedule in 2019. It is late January, and if you have, I'm so sorry, but I have. Ty, it's not great.
Really?
So Texas A&M in 2019, they go to Clemson week 2.
Oh boy.
They have Auburn later on in September, neutral site against Arkansas, followed by Alabama, and then they go to Ole Miss. And then they finish out the season, though. Their November/late October is Mississippi State, South Carolina as the crossover game every year, and they finish at Georgia at LSU.
That ain't easy. Oh boy.
A season at Georgia at LSU at Clemson. Clemson is rocky, Ty.
Okay.
It is rocky.
If they go with one loss all year, that would be like they're the number 2 team in the country with a schedule like that.
They absolutely are. And they've recruited well enough, and they will continue to recruit well enough. Year 2 of Mike Elko, and even without Travion Williams, I thought defensively they got better and better throughout the year, save for the LSU 7 overtime game. Texas A&M is quite interesting to me because they're the team that has a potential ceiling to, they have a lot higher to climb. That outside of Alabama, there are obvious concern about Auburn and stability, obvious concerns about LSU and generating offensive firepower consistently. But A&M feels like that wild card in the West, and that it made me a little more intrigued, I would say, given they're recruiting super duper well. Once again, I'm intrigued by that. And then I think that Joe Moorhead, once he has a forward pass thing and the Keaton Thompson hope is interesting to me about Mississippi State, that they're another one of those teams that if they have a winning record in conference, they could be winning 9-10 games. That's interesting to me. Yeah.
Interesting.
I like the optimism about Mississippi State and A&M.
All right. Well, Daniel, with all that being said, please write in. Let us know what you think. solidverbal@gmail.com. We're also out there at solidverbal.com. You can find all of our content. Don't forget to check us out on social media as well. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the usual hotspots. As Dan said at the top of the show, please do leave us a review. All that stuff helps. We will be around all off season, though only once a week now that we've got less college football stuff to talk about. So here's what we're going to do next week, because we haven't in a while, and because there is ever demand for it. Big Q&A show coming next Wednesday.
Yes. Might even be a two-parter. I don't know. We're going to stretch this one.
Big Q&A show coming. We've also got a fun show planned some point in the next couple weeks where we're going to look at like the 19 most important transactions, or I guess moments of like the young off season so far.
Yes.
And I guess college football season at large.
Can we do for that show? This is what I want to start doing occasionally. And this is how we'll know about, after the Marvel movies that, after the credits, there's a small little teaser scene of some kind.
Yeah.
I want to do, maybe it'll be on that transaction show. Maybe it'll be on the Q&A show. And by me saying it'll happen sort of ruins the Easter egg quality to it. But the transaction show, there is an asterisk to the show that I want to mention. And I almost want to do, this is so ridiculous. I don't know how to call it. I don't know what to call it. Can we do an after show for our own show on the same show?
That's very meta, Dan. But we could try.
I want to do isn't there like Talking Dead, like on AMC after The Walking Dead, where Chris Hardwick sits down and says like, "Well, what did we think about episode? That was crazy." Isn't that a thing?
We could do that.
They did that with Breaking Bad.
Sure.
So I think we do a post-game show on our own show after the show is over on the same show.
All right. Well, we're going to have
That's
to plan
all I'm going to say.
It's going to take us a week to figure out how to do that, but we can try.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're still trying to figure out when I try to say, do we want the playoff to be a postseason versus a championship finder?
All right. Well,
yeah, that's all.
Hit us up. Again, usual hotspots, email, solidverbal.com. Leave us a review. For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrand, still freezing over here in eastern Pennsylvania. We will catch you all in a week. In the meantime, enjoy your week, enjoy your weekend. By all means, stay solid.
Peace.